Today we have some very bullish news for XRP because there's an update in the Ripple v SEC lawsuit. Please understand that the lawsuit is not over, but there's good things happening here and there. And ultimately, the more good things that happen right now, the bigger the chances that Ripple is going to win in the end, which will ultimately be the biggest, craziest, most phenomenal pumps for XRP most likely. And now before we talk about what exactly is going on, guys, make sure you press the like button on this video. It is greatly appreciated. And let me know down below if you think Ripple is going to win the SEC v Ripple lawsuit. I'm personally very convinced that they will. But take a look at this. James Fillon shared about an hour ago, which is why I ran home. I was literally chilling with let's just say with another YouTuber over in Dubai right here, and I saw this news. I ran home. Ripple slams the SEC and the SEC's opposition to the iRemit and TabJet's motion to file amicus briefs. Quote, if the SEC cannot evaluate the veracity of such claims, then it had no business bringing this litigation in the first place, end quote. And this is absolutely fire. You might not fully understand why this is such a big deal or why this is so absolutely savage, but let me elaborate. So a little bit ago, we had two companies, iRemit and TabJets, basically go to the judge and say, hey, we use XRP in some way, shape, or form. We want to state that what the SEC is doing here is kind of odd, because at least one of these Howie prongs then doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let us just become friends of the court to explain our side of the story and how we utilize XRP, or potentially things of that nature, to assist the court in making some certain judgments, basically, because, well, they offer their own perspectives, and to some degree, they're basically involved because, well, the lawsuit is about a currency that they accept, in this case being XRP. Now, they quote, if the SEC cannot evaluate the veracity of such claims, meaning the SEC wants to say, hey, these guys should not be admitted as friends of the court, amicus curiae, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. To quickly state here, we saw TabJets, a private jet charter company, requesting to file an amicus brief in support of Ripple. TabJets accepts XRP in exchange for its services. Quote, for TabJets, the acceptance of XRP as payments for services is vital. And a little bit before that, a couple hours, we saw iRemit Inc., a global payment remittance company that uses the RippleNet software, has filed an application to file an amicus brief in support of the Ripple defendant's motion for summary judgment. A couple days later, there was a opposing, which I actually didn't cover yet on the channel. I was traveling for a little bit. Things were kind of difficult. But again, guys, I'm covering it now with the most important parts, so make sure you press that like button. The SEC opposes the iRemit and TabJet's motion to file an amicus brief, or two, claiming the proposed briefs are improper attempts to offer evidence outside the constraints of discovery restrictions, the rules of evidence, and this court's prior order. So they're basically saying that it really doesn't make a lot of sense because these briefs, them coming in, are improper attempts to offer evidence. Even though right now we're in summary judgment phase, not in the discovery phases anymore, they're basically saying that this evidence right now is not, in the earlier phases, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and they should follow the rules of the court. And Ripple's now stating, if you can't see how important getting iRemit and TabJets' opinion is in all of this, then why would you ever make such a claim? And I would agree. To give you guys a little bit more context, I personally think that the iRemit and TabJets here, they're the only ones that can provide a reasonable, opinion to the judge, because they're not affiliated with Ripple, and they can say, hey, we've utilized XRP in this or that way, and we think this or that about it. Now, from the SEC side, if they had expected that most parties which are independent from Ripple would have come in and, aided Ripple, basically, if they had expected that, then it would have been kind of hard to bring up this issue from the get-go, right? Because then you're basically shooting yourself in the foot preemptively by suing some guys that are going to get a lot of support, and if that support was going to make them win, and you knew that was going to happen, then it was kind of dumb. So either the SEC did not know that so many companies would help Ripple, or they didn't think it would be substantial, or yada, yada, yada. But to any degree, I think the SEC thought that if companies would join, that they would join the SEC side. That's the only logical explanation that I have. But to that extent then as well, if they really thought so, then it would be only logical if they allowed them to join now as well, right? Even though they're joining Ripple, they thought that, if you know, guess what I mean, right? So the only way in which they would have accepted it is if they joined their side. Is if they didn't, they're like, nah. But then if they didn't expect these guys to come on in, then why go for a lawsuit at all? Because these are critical players. It's not as if every XRP user used them before, but these are critical players in the sense that they utilize XRP. It's potentially a core part of their business. But most importantly, they're independent from Ripple and utilize this crypto. So their opinion is very valid. As SEC, an entity which is supposed to protect the consumers, supposed to protect the U.S. investors, these types of opinions and these types of actual use cases are, I think, what matters more than nearly anything else. We can kind of put aside the 73,000 XRP holders which were hurt by what the SEC is doing, which they've decided to ignore, even though a lot of those guys are also U.S. investors. But to then look at the companies which are standing up for I guess, whatever unfairness that the SEC is trying to put out, the fact that the SEC is trying to go against that shows how potentially sinister their motives have been or are still. Again, I don't want to call them out and saying that they're completely bad. The SEC has done a lot of good stuff. I'm just saying that this lawsuit is surely strange. Again, there are parts of this lawsuit which I can support. If, for example, the SEC wants to do an investigation into Chris Larson or whatever, Brad Garlinghouse's selling of XRP and whether or not that was all justifiable, sure, go ahead and do your investigation. But for a lot of the claims regarding securities, I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it was right. And specifically when you're going to omit certain key players, which opinions should surely be heard, then you should kind of be like, I just personally think it's hypocritical because I'm almost certain if these players were for the SEC side, they'd be very glad to open them up and say, hey, even though we're outside of Discovery, please come join us. Come, sit around the table, eat with me, have my food. But now that it's joining the opposition, which is logical because a lawsuit is kind of like war, right? It's not as if I expected the SEC to go easy about this. It's just that there's a very thin line between protecting you as investors and just trying to win a lawsuit for the sake of winning without actually being in the right. And as of this point, it looks as if the SEC is not trying to actually get justice for you as investors. They're just trying to win for the sake of winning. With what reason in mind? Potentially money, potentially status. That part we do not yet know completely. All we know is that to most of us, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I'm still going to be holding my XRP. I think they're going to win eventually. More and more of these crazy things are coming to light every single day. And honestly, I enjoy covering it for you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you press that like button. Just a quick little update, but a very critical one. Because the SEC denying Ripple this again, they're trying. And Ripple out, smacking them on the face. I don't know, gives me good vibes, gives me good hope. So yeah, I'm excited, and that's it.